Hey guys! Tonight we are stepping into a city where the air once shimmered with heat waves from bronze bulls. The streets reeked of scorched flesh, and tyrants ruled with pyres instead of laws. You walk through stone gates under a sky still glowing faintly from the smothered sun, and a sickly warmth clings to your cheeks. There is a bull statue looming ahead. Its polished bronze horns curl skyward like a silent scream. Beneath its belly lies the hatch where, if you were unlucky enough to upset the king, you'd be stuffed in, roasted alive, and your cries would pour from its mouth like a flute's song for the public's twisted delight. You probably won't survive this stroll if we traveled back for real. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time down below. I always find it calming to know where everyone is drifting off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the city, your sandals crunching against scorched gravel and stray charred pebbles that once formed decorative mosaics. Historians still argue whether this place was purely an execution site or if it doubled as a royal palace complex. But tonight, under this sleepy haze, you simply see it as a silent labyrinth of half-buried nightmares. The sun has long sunk beyond black hills, but torchlight flickers from brass sconces lining the crumbling walls. Ash drifts in every breeze, dancing around your ankles in little ghostly whirlwinds. To your left, an old woman huddles under a tattered linen awning, selling what looks like charred olive cakes. She calls out softly, offering you one as though this is a normal evening snack. You politely decline. The smell alone could end your appetite for a week. A stray dog slinks past, ribs tight under mangy fur, dragging a fishbone along the gravel. The only other sounds are muffled chanting from a temple in the distance, and the groan of wooden shutters warping in hot winds. You step over cracked tiles painted with faded images of bulls, lions, and, oddly, crocodiles wearing floral crowns. One fringe theory claims crocodile dung was used here as a sunscreen, or so ancient texts hint. Imagine rubbing sun-baked reptile droppings onto your arms before going outside. Suddenly, SPF 50 sounds delightful. You pause at a plaza where blackened stumps once held bronze statues of kings and gods. Local children would tie flowers to these stumps, praying not to be chosen for public punishments. You lean down and touch the cold stone. Under your fingers, tiny grooves remain where offerings of oil and honey once pooled before dripping onto the sand. The faint sweetness still seems to waft up, though it's probably just your sleepy brain mixing ghost scents with night air. A breeze curls past, carrying the smell of wood smoke and scorched copper. You shiver despite the heat. Around you loom towering pillars decorated with reliefs of captives being led to their doom. Some are depicted kneeling, arms bound, with birds of prey swooping overhead as if foreshadowing the feast to come. You turn towards the largest temple, past a half-collapsed arch. Its stone is scarred with soot streaks and rusty rivulets. Torches glow from inside, illuminating a colossal bronze bull perched atop a carved marble platform. Its massive horns scrape the lintel above, and from its open mouth dangles what looks like a cracked iron flute. The sound holes are rimmed with green patina. This is where cries became music, twisted innovation at its peak. Your shadow flickers across its flanks, and you think you hear a faint echo of screams. But it's only the wind slipping through the bull's mouthpiece, humming like an off-key lullaby. You step back, heart slowing again under the weight of drowsiness. This city has been buried in ash and memory for centuries, its flames extinguished, at least in the physical world. In stories and in restless dreams, they still flicker on. As you leave the temple behind, the bull's dark silhouette looms against the wavering torchlight, like a final warning to behave, obey, and never speak out of turn. Because here, rebellion wasn't silenced with exile or imprisonment. It was silenced with fire. You continue your quiet trudge down a sloping avenue paved with cracked sandstone slabs, each one etched with curling patterns of vines and lotus flowers, now dulled by centuries of soot and drifting ash. Ahead, the street opens into a wide square lined with buildings that seem to lean inward, their blackened walls whispering secrets to each other under the dim torchlight. This was once the city's beating heart, where merchants hawked spices, wool cloaks, and honey cakes beside execution arenas that doubled as public theaters. You pass a low marble platform where singers once performed songs praising the king's mercy. Ironically, just a few feet away looms a towering scaffold used to display criminals before burning. Historians still argue whether performances here truly masked the stench of scorched flesh, or whether the city simply got used to it over time. Your feet crunch over fallen roof tiles and bits of ceramic oil lamps. To your right stands a bakery with its clay oven still intact. The soot-stained arch is wide enough for 2 oxen to walk through side by side, and you imagine the baker's apprentice rising before dawn, kneading dough with sleepy fingers as heat rolled from the flames. One fringe theory claims that bakers here learned to judge oven temperatures by flicking flour inside. If it burned instantly, it was too hot. If it smoldered lightly, perfect. Just don't accidentally flick yourself in. Beyond the bakery, the arena looms, a shallow amphitheater ringed with stone seats and a sand-covered stage scorched black in places. You shuffle up the steps, settling on a worn stone bench. The seat is surprisingly smooth under your hand, polished by centuries of human bodies pressing against it. Above, the sky hangs heavy with indigo clouds, silent and unblinking. You imagine crowds gathered here at dawn, the front rows filled with dignitaries fanning themselves with palm leaf fans, the outer seats packed with dusty laborers eager for the free spectacle. A small bird hops along the edge of the arena, its feathers darkened with soot. It pecks at something half buried in ash, a fragment of bronze perhaps, or charred bone. You look away, listening instead to the ghostly echoes of chanting. Priests once stood on this stage, reciting prayers before executions. Some chants were to purify the condemned soul. Others, darker ones, were to bind their spirit into eternal servitude, so they might protect the city from curses. Historians still debate whether these rituals worked, or merely comforted fearful citizens. From where you sit, you can see 3 great temples bordering the square. The largest, devoted to the city's fire god, rises like a black pyramid draped in wavering torchlight. Its entrance is guarded by 2 enormous bronze bulls, both cast in lifelike detail with bulging veins and curled lips revealing gritted teeth. The sculptor clearly had a flair for drama, or perhaps a morbid obsession with bovine dentistry. A sleepy breeze stirs, carrying scents of burnt sandalwood, ancient sweat, and something oddly sweet beneath it all, as if a jar of honey cracked open long ago and never fully faded. You close your eyes briefly, letting the warmth sink into your skin. Even now, the ground feels hot in places. Archaeologists say this square was built above natural thermal vents that kept it warm year-round, a practical heating system, and a symbolic reminder of divine fire beneath. You rise and wander towards the southern edge, past darkened shop fronts where metalworkers once hammered copper bracelets and bronze bowls. Some doorways remain barred with iron grills, their intricate latticework casting shadowy patterns onto the ash-strewn street. A scrawny cat darts across your path, pausing to glare at you before disappearing into the gloom. You almost expect it to speak, perhaps scolding you for intruding on its silent dominion. Turning back towards the arena, you see where fires once burned brightest, a raised stone plinth in the center of the sand stage, ringed with black scorch marks. This was where the bronze bull sometimes stood, carried out for executions, as if it were a guest of honor. Some scholars believe this square hosted as many feasts as it did punishments, that the smell of roasting meat from banquets mingled indistinguishably with that of roasting flesh from executions. Sleepy thought, isn't it? As you leave the arena, your footsteps echo under the silent gaze of abandoned buildings, each doorway a mouth open in eternal scream. The shadows stretch across your path like black ribbons, flickering under guttering torches. You wonder how many ghosts drift through these streets, their ashes buried beneath paving stones, their cries now just faint breezes rustling between broken roof beams. And so you keep walking, guided by the fading torchlight, the silent bull statues, and the flickering memories of a city that burned its people alive, not just in punishment, but as public theater, divine offering, and political tool, a testament to humanity's endlessly inventive cruelty, softly fading now into the dusty warmth of sleep. You drift further down the quiet street until it curves gently towards a grand courtyard, where the torchlight reveals the city's most infamous monument, the brazen bull itself. Its colossal bronze body gleams dully under flickering flames, sculpted to resemble a muscular real bull in mid-charge, horns curling menacingly forward, nostrils flared in eternal rage. You stand before it, your shadow trembling across its polished flanks, and despite the sleepy warmth hugging your skin, a chill runs down your spine. The bull is hollow. You know that, and you can almost hear the faint echoes of what once filled its belly. Historians still argue whether the cries truly turned to music, as the bull's inventor claimed, or whether it was simply a sadistic illusion for the crowds gathered outside. The thin iron pipes leading from the mouth to the hollow chamber were designed so that the desperate screams transformed into melodic bellowing, mimicking the calls of a living bull. A twisted harmony of agony and entertainment. You circle the massive sculpture, noticing how its hooves are anchored to a stone base charred black with countless fires. There is a trap door cut into its ribcage, just large enough for a crouching human to crawl through, and rusted iron hinges squeak in the breeze. You imagine being forced inside, the bronze skin heating slowly, searing hair, skin, and bone in an unbearable crescendo. Sleepy thought, isn't it? A fringe theory suggests victims were smeared with fragrant oils before execution, both to mask the scent of burning flesh and to produce pleasing aromas for onlookers. Imagine that, your final moment spent sizzling like a spiced roast chicken at Sunday lunch. Humanity's creativity really has no ceiling, does it? Beyond the bull lies a small altar, its marble surface cracked and stained dark brown. Offerings of dates, olives, and wine were once left here by the condemned's families, hoping the gods would show mercy, or at least grant their loved ones a quick death. You kneel beside it, fingertips brushing a faint groove where liquid offerings once trickled down into a clay basin. A breeze curls past, carrying the ghost scent of wine and burnt copper. Nearby stands a giant bronze urn filled with charred bones. Archaeologists discovered hundreds of human remains here, though historians still debate whether these belonged solely to criminals or also included prisoners of war, rebels, and political enemies. A fringe inscription scratched onto the urn's rim simply reads, "Those who defied the bull fed its flame." You wonder who carved that. and whether they lived long enough to see the city's final fires fade. You rise and walk towards the bull's head. Its eyes are inlaid with black obsidian, glinting under the flames, reflecting your tired face back at you. Its mouth hangs open in a frozen roar, and you imagine it bellowing over the plaza as flames roared within. A cheeky part of you wonders if some apprentice ever dared stick their hand into the mouthpiece just to see if the music really worked. Probably not twice. Stepping away, your sandals crunch over grit and ash as you gaze at the brazier pits dotting the courtyard. Each pit is lined with blackened bricks and piled with ancient charcoal, long since extinguished. Shadows flicker across their rims, dancing like skeletal hands reaching up to snatch passers-by. A temple bell tolls in the distance, its deep, resonant note rolling over the city like a sleepy heartbeat. To your right, a small shrine nestles between two pillars, its walls painted with faded scenes of bulls and fire gods dancing amid swirling flames. One mural shows a priest guiding a kneeling prisoner towards the bull, their expression oddly serene. Perhaps resignation came easily in a city where mercy was measured by how quickly you burned. You move closer to the shrine, peering at the tiny votive figurines scattered around the floor, clay bulls, little bronze flames, and carved wooden eyes meant to ward off curses. One fringe belief held that placing an evil eye amulet here protected your family from accusations or executions. After all, if you're asleep in your bed, no one can accuse you of treason while you dream. Leaving the shrine behind, you wander back to the bull. Its bronze flanks gleam softly in torchlight, the hatch gaping open like a yawn. You wonder how many final prayers echoed inside that belly of death, only to emerge as twisted music for a ruler's cruel delight. The warm breeze rustles your hair, and for a moment, you think you hear a faint melody drifting from the bull's mouthpiece, a ghost lullaby of those who came before you. And as your eyes grow heavier, you realize the city's cruelty remains silent now, buried under centuries of ash, soot, and the sleep-softened memories of a place where justice was measured in firelight and pain became song for those who watched. You linger near the brazen bull, the wavering torchlight painting molten shadows across its flanks. As your sleepy gaze drifts over the polished bronze surface, your mind wanders to the story of its invention, a tale so dark it almost circles back to absurdity. Historians still argue whether the account is exaggerated propaganda or a faithful record of tyrannical irony. But here, in the quiet hush of this haunted courtyard, it feels as real as the warm breeze brushing your cheek. The bull's creator was Perilos of Athens, a master metalworker renowned for his artistry. According to the old tales, he was commissioned by the tyrant to invent a new form of execution, one both horrifying and entertaining, an instrument of death disguised as public theater. Perilos designed the bull with meticulous care, the hollow chamber to hold a human body, the complex acoustic tubes that transformed screams into musical bellows, and the sculpted perfection of its form, down to the angry curl of its nostrils. A fringe theory even claims he tested the pipes himself using a goat's bleats, adjusting the lengths until the sound was suitably melodic. Imagine that, fine-tuning agony like an organ builder crafting hymns for church. When Perilos presented the bull to the tyrant, he boasted of its musical brilliance, perhaps a little too eagerly. The tyrant, delighted but suspicious of such enthusiasm, ordered Perilos to demonstrate it, not with a goat this time, but with his own body. Guards seized the metalworker, stripped him down, and shoved him into his gleaming masterpiece. As the hatch clanged shut behind him, the fire was lit beneath the bull's belly. Some say the tyrant pulled him out before death claimed him, simply to admire his burns and hear his croaked pleas for mercy. Others claim Perilos burned alive, becoming both the creator and first victim of his own device. Historians still debate which version is true. Either way, you can't help thinking it's the ultimate customer review. Product works perfectly. Inventor died screaming. A warm breeze carries the faint scent of burning sandalwood from a nearby temple, mingled with old copper and night-blooming jasmine. You take a slow breath and step closer to the bull's massive head. Its obsidian eyes glimmer darkly, reflecting the courtyard's flickering torchlight and your sleep-blurred silhouette. If Perilos's ghost lingers here, trapped in bronze forever, perhaps it hums quietly to itself, the eternal music of a genius punished by his own brilliance. Beyond the bull, you notice a narrow staircase carved into the courtyard's stone wall, leading down into the earth. Curious, you descend, each step growing cooler, the air smelling faintly of damp ash and ancient iron. At the bottom lies a small chamber lit by 2 oil lamps. Bronze tools hang on rusted hooks, chisels, awls, hammers, tongs. This was likely the bull's maintenance room, where slaves polished its flanks to keep them gleaming and repaired cracks formed by intense heat. On a stone shelf rests a clay tablet covered in soot-blackened cuneiform. A fringe translation suggests it reads, "Oil the horns before each use." Practical, if slightly horrific. You imagine an apprentice dutifully brushing olive oil onto the horns before each execution, polishing them to a golden sheen so the crowd could admire the bull's grandeur as screams echoed from its belly. You run your fingers over the tool handles, cool and dusty under your touch, then climb back to the courtyard. The bull remains there, unmoving, looming against the silent sky. You wonder if Perilos, in his final moments, thought about the pride of creation or the foolishness of pleasing a tyrant. Perhaps he thought nothing at all, just felt heat, smelled his own burning skin, and heard the distorted music of his agony becoming applause. The torch flames flicker low now, shadows curling around the bull's body like dark vines. Its mouth gapes open towards the stars, and you almost expect it to exhale a final dying note, echoing across the courtyard in a sleepy lullaby. But it remains silent, just bronze, ash, and forgotten screams as you step away, your feet crunching softly over soot and stone. The warm breeze carries with it a faint whisper, or perhaps your tired mind simply weaving ghost voices into the night air. Either way, you leave Perilos behind in his dark bronze prison, his story another sleepy thread in the tapestry of this city that burned its people alive and called it justice. You leave the courtyard behind, the bull's looming silhouette fading into darkness as you wander down a narrow lane lined with crumbling brick walls. Above, faint stars flicker through drifting ash clouds, their cold light a sharp contrast to the lingering heat radiating from the stones underfoot. The lane slopes gently downwards and opens into an expansive terrace overlooking the city's lower quarters. Here, perched atop the terrace's edge, you see the remnants of what was once the tyrant's palace complex. Wide marble steps lead up to columns carved with swirling flame motifs, their grooves darkened by soot and time. You climb slowly, each step feeling heavier under the weight of sleep, until you stand before the grand hall where the ruler began his mornings, a daily routine that mixed luxury breakfasts, paranoid rituals, and casual executions. Inside, cracked mosaic tiles depict scenes of bulls, lions, and the fire god dancing above kneeling captives. Historians still argue whether these images were meant to inspire loyalty, fear, or both. As you wander deeper, your sandals brushing away ash piles, you pass rows of carved benches where scribes once sat, recording edicts and royal decrees on wax tablets. One fringe record claims the tyrant demanded to hear the screams from the bronze bull as he ate breakfast, insisting it aided his digestion. Imagine slurping honey porridge while someone roasts alive for your personal soundtrack. The Great Hall stretches before you, vast and silent, its roof partially collapsed to reveal the star-dusted sky. In the center stands a massive stone table still set with cracked ceramic plates and toppled bronze cups. You picture servants scurrying in before dawn, laying out roasted lamb, honeyed figs, barley bread, and spiced wine while guards fanned braziers to keep the air warm. A sleepy breeze rolls through the broken columns, rustling your hair and carrying the faint scent of old ashes mixed with thyme. At the far end, behind a high-backed bronze throne, hangs a blackened tapestry embroidered with scenes of burning cities and kneeling captives offering tribute. It ripples gently in the breeze, its threads stiff with centuries of soot. You step closer, reaching out to touch the embroidered flames with your fingertip. The fabric is brittle under your touch, and a few black threads snap away like old spider silk. Beside the throne sits a small ivory stool where the ruler's chief advisor once waited each morning to recite the day's reports. Taxes collected, petitions filed, rebellions crushed, executions scheduled. Historians still debate whether the tyrant listened carefully or simply nodded along while dipping flatbread into honey. Either way, decisions were made that shaped the lives, and often the deaths, of thousands. Your eyes drift to the throne itself. Its armrests are carved with snarling bullheads, their eyes inlaid with jet stones now dulled by time. The seat's bronze surface is polished smooth by decades of royal robes sweeping over it, and deep grooves in the footrest suggest the tyrant sat here for hours, perhaps drumming his heels in boredom as courtiers pleaded for mercy. You can almost hear his heavy sigh echoing through the empty hall, followed by the creak of guards dragging away another unfortunate soul for burning. A fringe rumor claims the tyrant believed fire purified not just the body, but the soul, cleansing rebellion and sin in a single agonizing act. He ordered priests to chant purification hymns outside the bull during executions, so that victims might pass into the next world with their sins scorched away. Sleepy thought, isn't it? The idea that pain can wash away all mistakes in the end. You wander behind the throne to a small antechamber, its stone shelves lined with clay tablets, each etched with lists of names, executions, tax records, decrees of exile. The air here is cooler, carrying a faint hint of myrrh and decay. You brush your fingers across one tablet and read a half-erased name, wondering if that person's bones lie somewhere in the ashes beneath your feet. Stepping back into the great hall, the quiet presses against your ears, thick and absolute. The throne looms in the flickering torchlight, empty now, its bronze bulls snarling into darkness with no master to command them. You imagine the tyrant, robes heavy with gold thread, reclining here as dawn's first light spilled through the roof, savoring spiced wine while screams echoed from below, a daily routine woven from cruelty, fear, and cold indifference. And as you turn away, the wind sighs through the ruined columns, brushing warmth against your cheek like a parting whisper from the ghosts of those mornings long past. Fading now into the sleepy hush of the city's endless night, you leave the throne room behind, stepping down the marble stairs and back into the open night. The warm breeze carries with it faint traces of incense and burnt olive oil, curling softly around your ankles as you follow the stone path towards the southern edge of the palace grounds. Ahead rises a smaller amphitheater, lit by flickering torches wedged into iron brackets along its outer wall. As you approach, you hear nothing but the hiss of flames and your own quiet breathing. This was the arena where the city's crowds gathered to watch executions, and the brazen bull was the star attraction. You step into the semicircular seating area, each tier carved from pale sandstone, now stained dark with soot and old blood. Your sandals scrape softly against the worn steps as you descend towards the stage, where a wide black scorch mark still darkens the center. Historians still argue whether performances here were accompanied by music to mask the screams, or if the music was the screams, distorted through the bull's twisted pipes. You settle onto a low bench near the front, the stone cool beneath your fingertips. You imagine citizens flocking here at dawn, nobles fanning themselves with ostrich feathers while street vendors hawked roasted chickpeas and figs. Children perched on their parents' laps, eyes wide with excitement, the same way modern children watch Saturday morning cartoons. A fringe theory claims roasted lamb skewers sold better on execution days. Apparently, agony whetted the appetite. Across the arena, a carved frieze depicts bulls and lions trampling fallen prisoners, each face twisted in stylized fear. The images catch torchlight, their shadows dancing across the stone wall behind in jerky, ghostly movements. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the flickering darkness seep into your weary mind, and you almost hear the roar of the crowd rising with each muffled cry from within the bronze bull. At the stage's edge stands a tall bronze brazier, its basin lined with blackened charcoal. You move closer, peering down into the ashy depths. A faint sweetness rises up, charred resin and burnt honey, perhaps. Remnants of offerings thrown onto the fire to please the gods of death and flame. Historians still debate whether this brazier burned purely for ritual or if its flames were used to ignite the pyres of victims too insignificant for the bull's grand performance. Turning away, your eyes drift towards the entrance arch, where a pair of bronze bull statues flank the gateway, their horns sweeping towards each other in a silent clash. Their bodies are covered with soot streaks, and green patina drips from their eyes like frozen tears. One fringe rumor claims that during executions, priests anointed the bull's horns with cedar oil so that their scent mingled with the smell of burning flesh, creating an almost festive aroma for the crowd. Imagine the flyers for such an event. Come for the holy cedar scent, stay for the screaming concert. You climb back up the amphitheater steps and stand at the highest tier, gazing down at the silent stage. The shadows cast by torchlight flicker across the scorched sand, and for a fleeting moment, you see the blurred outline of a kneeling figure being dragged towards the bronze bull, their head bowed under the weight of resignation. Then the shadow flickers away, leaving only the cool hush of midnight air. As you turn to leave, your gaze catches a stone tablet embedded into the outer wall of the arena, half covered in ash. You brush it clean with your palm, revealing a simple inscription. Here, music soothed the people. Historians still argue whether this was genuine pride in the bull's acoustic miracle or a dark joke left by a scribe with a grim sense of humor. Either way, you can almost hear the echo of that music now, drifting up through the empty tiers like a ghostly lullaby. You step back onto the main path, leaving behind the silent amphitheater, the shadows of crowds long turned to ash, and the bull whose melodies were forged from human suffering. The breeze curls past your ears, carrying with it the fading echoes of cheers and screams, blending into a soft, sleepy whisper that guides your weary feet deeper into the city of fire and silent ghosts. You wander away from the arena, your feet carrying you along a quiet colonnade lined with soot-blackened pillars. The torchlight flickers across their carved surfaces, revealing images of priests lifting offerings to gods with curling ram horns and fierce bull heads. The smell of burnt sandalwood clings to the warm night air, mixed with drifting ash and the faint metallic tang of old bronze. Ahead, the columns open into a broad courtyard surrounded by shrines and small temples. Here, the punishments were not always for spectacle alone. Some became sacred offerings. You step softly across cracked mosaic tiles depicting stylized flames and bulls prancing above kneeling humans, their hands raised in surrender. Historians still argue whether these murals celebrated executions as religious rites or simply reinforced the ruler's terrifying power. To your left stands a low altar with bronze edges, its stone surface blackened with soot and streaked with dried wax from old votive candles. A fringe belief claims that after executions in the brazen bull, priests would scrape small fragments of charred bone and grind them into powder, mixing it with sacred oils to anoint temple statues for protection against curses. Sleepy thought, isn't it? Smearing gods with ashes of the punished to guard yourself from harm. You pause at the altar, brushing away drifting ash to reveal a small inscription carved into the stone. The flames purify the soul for eternity. You wonder if those forced inside the bull took any comfort in such words. Probably not. The gentle breeze rustles your hair, carrying a faint warmth from nearby braziers as if the city's ghosts are sighing into the night. Beyond the altar rises a towering statue of the fire god, arms spread wide, bronze robes rippling with stylized flames down to his sandaled feet. His face is smooth and expressionless, obsidian eyes staring into the dark as if watching your every move. Around his neck hangs a necklace of tiny bull-shaped amulets, each with curled horns and hollow bellies, miniature echoes of the brazen bull that burned countless lives away. At the statue's base lies a scatter of offerings, clay pots filled with olive oil, bundles of dried lavender tied with faded red twine, cracked ceramic figurines of kneeling worshippers, and a small bronze bowl half filled with what looks like dark, crusted honey. A fringe rumor claims this honey was mixed with ashes from execution fires, believed to hold healing properties for burns and infections. Imagine slathering yourself with that concoction, hoping a little charred blessing might keep wounds from festering. You circle behind the statue where a narrow passage leads to a hidden prayer chamber. Inside, walls are painted with swirling flame motifs, each lick of painted fire enclosing images of human figures dissolving into smoke. Oil lamps flicker in carved niches, their yellow light turning the paintings into a shifting dance of shadows. The air here is warm and still, carrying the scent of old myrrh and copper. You stand in silence, breathing slowly, letting the heat seep into your weary bones. Historians still debate whether these secret chambers were for priests alone, or if the condemned were brought here to confess their final prayers before burning. One faded inscription scratched into the plaster reads, "My soul burns brighter than your flames." Perhaps a final act of defiance, immortalized in flickering shadows. You leave the chamber, stepping back into the courtyard where the fire god looms tall, silent and watchful. The breeze curls around his bronze robes, carrying drifting ash across your feet like tiny gray moths fluttering in the torchlight. You wonder how many people knelt here, trembling in fear and hope, their fate sealed by the ruler's whim and the priest's chants. As you walk away, the silent temples watch you pass with empty doorways and soot-streaked columns, their shadows stretching across the tiles like dark, languid fingers. The scent of sandalwood and burnt olive oil fades behind you, replaced by the quiet hum of the city's sleeping streets. And above it all, The bronze bull's silhouette glows softly under the wavering torchlight, a silent reminder that in this city, fire was both god and executioner, and the line between sacrifice and punishment burned away long ago. You drift away from the temple courtyard, following a narrow street lined with shuttered market stalls and cracked clay jars stacked in dusty alcoves. The scent of burnt sandalwood fades behind you, replaced by the quiet perfume of night-blooming jasmine climbing over collapsed archways. Your sandals crunch softly over scattered fragments of blackened pottery as you move deeper into the shadowed lanes, where few dared walk after dark. Here, whispers once slithered through the alleys like hidden streams. You pause beside a low wall, leaning your hand against warm sandstone, and listen. If you quiet your breathing, you can almost hear them now. Secret conversations carried on smoky breaths, weaving through shadows. This was the quarter where resistance took root, where rebels plotted in silence to overthrow their fire-worshipping king. Historians still argue whether this rebellion was driven purely by rage against public executions, or if famine and tax oppression finally ignited their courage. Either way, you imagine these narrow streets filled with cloaked figures, their eyes flickering with torchlight as they passed coded messages hidden in folded palm leaf scrolls. A fringe theory claims they used perfume to identify each other. Jasmine oil for common rebels, sandalwood for inner circle assassins. Imagine sniffing someone's wrist in greeting to check their rank. Not quite today's LinkedIn introductions. You pass an old doorway where soot streaks trickle down faded carvings of bulls and gods. Inside, the small room is littered with broken pottery and shattered oil lamps. Shadows pool in the corners like silent sentinels. This was once a spice merchant's stall, repurposed at night as a meeting place for rebel leaders. You step inside, ducking under a cracked lintel, and kneel by a half-buried jar. The scent of cloves and burnt cinnamon still lingers in the clay, a faint whisper of forgotten commerce and secret gatherings. On the far wall, scratches form a rough inscription. Ash feeds the seed of freedom. You run your fingers over the carved letters, feeling the deep grooves cut by a desperate hand in flickering lamplight. Perhaps it was a prayer. Perhaps a promise. Either way, the words remain, echoing softly through the hush of crumbling stone and drifting ash. You leave the stall and continue down the lane, weaving between collapsed archways and piles of shattered roof tiles. Overhead, the stars flicker coldly, their pale glow barely reaching the street. A warm breeze stirs dust and ash into tiny, swirling ghosts around your ankles as you approach a hidden courtyard tucked behind a half-collapsed granary. Here, rebels once gathered to train with short bronze knives and curved sickles repurposed from harvest tools. Historians still debate whether their weapons were smithed in secret or stolen from royal armories. You imagine them standing barefoot on the cool tiles, practicing silent strikes under the watchful gaze of their leader, a woman in dark linen robes, her hair tied back with a strip of soot-black cloth to mark her defiance. A fringe rumor claims she once confronted the tyrant publicly, demanding an end to the burnings. For her insolence, she was thrown into the brazen bull, her screams rising as a melody of vengeance that fueled her followers' resolve. Sleepy thought, isn't it? The way flames can silence a voice yet set fire to hundreds more. You step into the courtyard center, feeling the cracked tiles shift under your feet. Around you stand crumbling walls etched with faint painted symbols, coiled serpents, open palms, and curling flames crossed out with black ash streaks. These were the rebels' marks, warnings to keep silent and vigilant. You brush your fingers across a serpent's fading coils, the paint flaking onto your skin like old memories. The breeze sighs through the broken archways, rustling jasmine vines and carrying the scent of ash and earth. You stand quietly, breathing in the sleepy warmth of this hidden place where hope was forged from fear, and rebellion simmered beneath the city's roaring flames. As you turn to leave, your footsteps echo softly off stone and soot, fading into the hush of the sleeping streets. Behind you, shadows gather around the courtyard's fallen columns, wrapping the rebels' silent whispers in darkness once more, their dreams and defiance woven into the city's quiet night. Waiting for dawn that never came, you move away from the rebels' hidden courtyard, stepping back onto a wide avenue that winds towards the palace's outer walls. The air grows warmer as you walk, each breath carrying hints of burning cedar, old incense, and drifting ash. Ahead, the faint glow of torchlight pulses from an open plaza bordered by tall stone columns etched with stylized flames and bulls rearing in silent rage. This was where the final attempt to kill the tyrant unfolded. You step into the plaza, your sandals brushing over mosaics depicting triumphal processions, now cracked and scorched. A hush hangs heavy here, like the lingering echo of words never spoken aloud. You stand at the edge, looking across the torch-lit space towards the temple steps, where rebels once hid in shadow, waiting for their moment to strike. Historians still argue whether this assassination attempt was meticulously planned or simply an act of desperate rage. A fringe theory claims they disguised themselves as incense bearers, carrying bronze censers filled with smoldering cedar and myrrh to mask the scent of sweat and fear. Imagine slipping through palace guards with your murder weapon hidden among sacred perfumes. A true medieval espionage mood. You walk towards the temple steps, the stone warm under your feet despite the night air. Here, beneath flickering torchlight, rebels once knelt in pretend worship, their sickles hidden under folded linen sashes. Above them loomed the tyrant's dais, draped in embroidered black cloth that shimmered with stylized flame motifs. The ruler sat upon his high-backed bronze throne, a thin golden circlet resting on his shaved head, his robes embroidered with bull heads that snarled with each flicker of torchlight. As you climb the steps, your hand brushing the soot-blackened banister, you imagine the rebels rising silently from their prayer, stepping forward under the cover of incense smoke. Their leader, eyes narrowed against the swirling perfume haze, raised her curved blade, its bronze surface gleaming red in the torchlight. For a fleeting heartbeat, all fell silent. The priests paused their chants. The torch flames flickered still. Even the ever-present breeze seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos erupted. Guards lunged forward, their bronze-tipped spears clattering against stone tiles. The rebels struck out wildly, blades flashing through curls of incense smoke. The tyrant rose, robes swirling around his sandaled feet, his eyes wide with disbelief. One rebel lunged up the final steps, sickle raised high, only to be struck down by a guard's spear, her scream swallowed by chanting priests who raised their voices louder to drown out the sound of bloodshed. You stand beside the throne now, gazing down at the cracked tiles darkened with old stains. Historians still debate whether the tyrant was wounded that night or merely frightened into paranoia for the rest of his days. Some records claim he bore a scar across his chest where a sickle grazed him. Others insist no blade ever touched him, that his gods protected him with invisible fire. A fringe rumor whispers that after the failed assassination, the tyrant ordered every rebel burned alive in the brazen bull, their screams echoing like a symphony of defiance twisted into music for his triumph. Imagine sitting upon this throne, sipping spiced wine while the melodies of your enemies' deaths drifted through incense smoke. Sleepy thought, isn't it? You reach out and touch the throne's armrest. The bronze is cool under your fingertips, polished smooth by centuries of hands, rulers gripping it in anger, fear, or boredom, servants polishing it to a golden gleam, rebels leaving blood streaks as they fell at its base. The breeze curls around you, carrying a faint scent of cedar and charred flesh. The torch flames dance softly, casting flickering shadows of bulls across the dais wall, their horns seeming to twist and writhe like silent curses. Stepping back down the temple stairs, you glance one last time at the plaza where rebellion rose in smoke and ended in flame. The silence presses against your ears, thick and absolute, broken only by the faint sigh of ash drifting over stone. And as you leave, your footsteps fading into the hush of the city's sleeping streets, the shadows gather around the throne once more, guarding the tyrant's memory, a ruler untouched by blades, but forever haunted by music forged from human screams. You walk away from the temple steps, leaving behind the flickering shadows of failed rebellion and entering a wide processional avenue lined with towering statues. Each figure is carved from dark volcanic stone, their bull-headed forms standing 3 times your height, arms folded across their chests in silent judgment. Their obsidian eyes reflect the wavering torchlight, creating an eerie sense that they watch your every move. This avenue once led to the sacred gate, where condemned prisoners took their final walk. You move forward, sandals crunching over blackened gravel scattered with tiny fragments of charred bone. Historians still argue whether these remains belonged to those burned within the brazen bull or to older sacrifices buried beneath the city's foundations to strengthen its walls. Either way, you step carefully, as if each fragment might whisper secrets beneath your feet. The statues loom on either side, their horns curving high, mouths curled into eternal snarls. A fringe rumor claims the priests poured fresh blood over these statues before dawn rituals, letting it drip down their chests to symbolize the gods' hunger being sated. Imagine washing down your morning barley porridge with the scent of bloodied stone, breakfast of tyrants. Halfway down the avenue, you pause before one particularly massive statue. Its surface is covered with tiny carved inscriptions, prayers scratched by trembling hands. Some plead for mercy, others curse the ruler with words almost erased by centuries of soot and wind. One near the base reads simply, "I walk alone today." Sleepy thought, isn't it? A final confession carved into silent stone before flames claimed the voice that wrote it. The breeze sighs between the statues, curling around your ankles with warmth that rises from the stone underfoot. You step closer to the base of the giant bull-headed figure, resting your palm against its carved knee. The stone is warm, almost comforting in its silent strength, as if the god's spirit still hums faintly inside. You close your eyes, feeling your breath slow as the quiet presses in around you, heavy with drifting ash and fading torchlight. Beyond the statues rises the sacred gate itself, 2 monumental pillars supporting an arch decorated with flame motifs and snarling bronze bull heads. You walk under the archway, the carvings glowing in torchlight overhead, and emerge into a small courtyard lit by dozens of oil lamps arranged in concentric circles around a central pit. This pit was where purification fires burned day and night. Priests and priestesses would gather here to chant hymns as they threw offerings of cedarwood, myrrh, cinnamon, and pine resin into the flames. Historians still debate whether the pit was ever used for human offerings in secret, hidden behind chants of purification. A fringe theory claims the soot at its bottom contains traces of bone ash, though no official excavation has confirmed it. Sleepy comfort, perhaps, that some secrets remain buried by time. You kneel at the pit's edge, gazing into the darkness below. The air rising from within is warm and smells faintly of charred resin and old blood. Around you, the chanting of ghostly priests seems to whisper through the wavering lamp flames, their voices weaving a sleepy lullaby of fire, purification, and sacrifice. You let the warmth curl up your arms, soaking into your tired muscles as the oil lamps flicker in rhythmic silence. Rising again, you leave the courtyard, stepping through a narrow stone passageway into the darkness beyond. The lamps behind you flicker out of sight, their faint glow fading until only starlight remains above. The statues watch your departure with silent obsidian eyes, their carved horns cutting into the indigo sky like frozen lightning. And as you walk on, deeper into the silent heart of the city that burned its people alive, the echoes of chanting priests and the flickering shadows of sacred bulls wrap around your weary mind, lulling your thoughts into the quiet warmth of sleep. You continue along the darkened path, leaving behind the silent statues and purification pit. The avenue narrows here, curling around the outer walls of the palace complex before opening onto a broad stone terrace. Above, the sky stretches out in velvet darkness, dotted with cold, indifferent stars. A warm breeze rustles past your cheeks, carrying with it the faint scent of burning olive oil and drifting soot. This terrace once served as the observation platform for the city's great festival of fire. You step onto its cracked tiles, your sandals crunching over scattered ash, and gaze out across the cityscape below. Even now, centuries later, the charred remains of temples, villas, and colonnades glimmer faintly in the torchlight, like sleeping giants buried in soot. Historians still argue whether the festival began as a religious rite or as a public performance designed to reinforce the ruler's dominance. It took place once every year at midsummer, when the city's heat reached its peak and the people were already half melted from the sun. A fringe rumor claims that during these festivals, prisoners were forced to march through the streets wearing bronze bull masks, their arms shackled in front of them, as priests scattered burning resin along their path to cleanse their sins before death. You lean against the terrace's carved stone railing, tracing your fingertips over the swirling flame motifs etched into its surface. The stone is warm under your touch, absorbing the last heat of the dying day. Below, the grand boulevard leading to the temple courtyard lies silent and empty. But you imagine it packed with sweating bodies, nobles fanning themselves with ostrich feathers, merchants hawking roasted goat skewers and cinnamon-spiced date cakes, children perched on shoulders, straining to see the condemned. The festival culminated at sunset, when prisoners were led onto raised platforms set before the brazen bull, forced to kneel as priests anointed their foreheads with oil and recited purification chants. Historians still debate whether these final prayers were believed to cleanse the soul before death or simply to soothe the watching crowd's conscience. A fringe belief claims a special perfume was burned during the final prayer, a blend of cedarwood, jasmine, and crocodile dung, apparently used by priests for its pungent protective properties. Imagine dabbing that behind your ears before a date. You close your eyes, breathing in the phantom scents of smoke, sweat, and burning resin that seem to curl through the silent air. The wind whispers past, carrying the ghostly echoes of chanting priests and the faint roar of crowds cheering as the bronze bull's belly began to glow red-hot in the gathering dusk. Opening your eyes again, you look west towards the jagged silhouette of the city's outer wall, where torchlight flickers against stone towers topped with carved bull heads. Between the towers lies the execution gate, a wide bronze-plated archway through which condemned prisoners were led to their fate. The arch still stands now, silent and corroded, its polished panels dulled to a murky brown by centuries of drifting ash. You walk towards it, each step crunching softly over scattered bone fragments and soot. At the gate's base, you kneel and brush away a thin layer of ash to reveal a half-erased inscription. "Through this gate, walk the flame's children." Sleepy thought. Isn't it? To be reduced to fire's offspring. Your entire existence distilled into a moment of burning and forgotten smoke. Rising again, you walk under the archway, the bronze panels looming above your head, reflecting your tired face in faint, warped shadows. Beyond lies a short stairway descending into darkness, where the stone walls close in on either side, cool and silent, carrying only the echo of your quiet footsteps and the slow rhythm of your breath. As you reach the bottom of the stairs, the breeze curls past you again, warmer now, carrying the scent of scorched metal and drifting resin. And as you step into the next silent chamber, the darkness wraps around your weary mind like a soft shroud, guiding you deeper into the story of this city that worshipped flames, silenced dissent with music forged from screams, and burned its people alive beneath a velvet sky full of indifferent stars. You step into a broad underground chamber, its high arched ceiling supported by rows of massive stone pillars etched with curling flame motifs. The air here is thick and warm, carrying the smell of old charcoal, burned resin, and damp earth. Your footsteps echo softly across the soot-streaked floor, mingling with the quiet drip of condensation falling from cracks in the ceiling above. This was the cremation vault, where the charred remains of the city's executed were brought after the crowds dispersed. Historians still argue whether this chamber was originally designed as a sacred ossuary or simply as a hidden disposal vault for burned bones. Either way, you stand among thousands of silent remnants, their stories long dissolved into drifting ash. You walk slowly between low stone platforms piled with blackened fragments of bone and teeth. Some lie in neatly stacked rows, others scattered in careless heaps. A fringe rumor claims priests sorted the remains by social class, nobles laid to rest on raised altars dusted with saffron and cedar ash, commoners swept into clay bins at the far end of the vault. Sleepy thought, isn't it? Hierarchy persisting even in the hush of burned death. Near one of the platforms stands a massive clay jar as tall as your shoulders, its rim blackened with soot, its belly etched with looping cuneiform prayers for purification and rebirth. You rest your hand on its warm surface and read a half-faded inscription. "May flame cleanse your sins and lift you skyward." You wonder if any grieving parent or child took comfort in those words, or if they simply wept silently into the warm darkness, their tears leaving dark trails through the soot on their cheeks. You move further into the chamber where the pillars grow closer together, the darkness deepening between them. Here, oil lamps flicker from wall niches, their flames wavering in sleepy rhythm. Their light reveals stone shelves carved directly into the walls, each holding a row of ceramic urns sealed with soot-blackened wax. Some are marked with names scratched in quick, shaky script. Others bear only a single flame symbol, anonymous ashes, unclaimed and forgotten. Historians still debate whether families were allowed to retrieve these remains or if the ruler forbade it, leaving the vault to become a silent forest of bones beneath the city. A fringe belief claims that priests mixed the ashes into mortar used to repair temple walls, binding condemned souls forever within the sacred structures. Imagine praying for rain under a temple roof built with crushed bones. You reach the far end of the chamber, where a single bronze bull head rests upon a raised stone plinth. Its eyes are hollow, mouth slightly open as if frozen mid-bellow. Here, priests performed final purification rites, brushing ashes over the bull's head and chanting prayers to release the last remnants of suffering from the scorched remains. The bronze is warm under your fingertips, polished smooth by centuries of ritual touches. You wonder if the ghosts felt freed or simply wandered the vault in endless silent circles. A warm breeze curls through the chamber, rustling the lamp flames and stirring the ash across the stone floor into tiny, swirling ghosts. You close your eyes and listen to the quiet hum of flickering oil flames, the drip of water from the ceiling, and the distant sigh of wind through the temple corridors above. For a moment, it feels like you stand among a sleeping crowd, each drifting ash fragment a silent soul resting in the warm hush of the vault. You turn to leave, stepping softly between the stone platforms and clay urns, your sandals brushing trails through the soot. As you ascend the short staircase back towards the surface, the darkness recedes behind you, leaving only the echo of your quiet steps and the warm breath of drifting ash curling around your ankles like a final sleepy farewell. You emerge from the cremation vault into the quiet night air, the warmth of the underground chamber still clinging to your skin. The breeze brushes past your face, cool and scented with drifting jasmine and faint traces of old charcoal. You stand upon a broad stone walkway leading away from the palace complex, winding down towards the lower quarters of the city. Here, narrow streets snake between collapsed villas and soot-streaked columns, their shadows merging into a labyrinth of darkness. You walk slowly, each step echoing off stone walls as you move deeper into what was once the artisans' district, home to bronze workers, potters, and temple sculptors who shaped the very symbols of fear that ruled their lives. Historians still argue whether these artisans viewed their work as sacred duty or silent rebellion. Imagine hammering out the brazen bull's snarling mouthpiece, knowing your craft would distort screams into music for a tyrant's feast. A fringe rumor claims some workers left secret marks within their creations, tiny carved flames crossed out with hidden lines to curse the ruler's house. Sleepy thought, isn't it? Rebellion etched into bronze while pretending to polish it to perfection. You pass a collapsed workshop, its doorway buried beneath drifted ash and broken roof tiles. Pushing aside a fallen timber, you step inside. The air smells of old charcoal, copper dust, and burned resin. Scattered across the stone floor lie fragments of broken molds, bull horns, snarling jaws, stylized flames. A cracked bronze hammer rests against the far wall, its handle blackened by soot. You kneel to pick it up. The wood is brittle under your grip, flaking into your palm like dried leaves. On a low shelf sits a row of clay tablets covered in quick cuneiform notes. You brush ash from their surfaces, revealing workshop records, orders for bronze amulets shaped like bulls, contracts for temple braziers, inventory tallies of copper ingots and goat fat for mold release. Among them lies a small tablet, etched with a prayer. Let my hands shape mercy from flame. Perhaps a final whispered hope that some tool made here brought comfort rather than death. You set the tablet back on the shelf and stand, your knees creaking softly in the hush. Outside, the breeze rustles through cracked windows, carrying the faint scent of burnt olive oil from abandoned kitchens nearby. You leave the workshop, stepping back into the silent street, and continue past shuttered villas with soot-streaked murals of dancing priests and snarling bulls. Ahead, a narrow alley opens into a small square where a blackened fountain stands, its basin cracked and dry. At its center rises a bronze sculpture of a kneeling captive, bound in stylist chains, their head bowed beneath a flame-shaped crown. Historians still debate whether this figure represented a rebel leader, a defeated enemy king, or simply the idea of submission itself. A fringe theory claims that during festivals, priests poured burning oil down the statue's back, creating an illusion of living flame consuming the figure. Imagine gathering your children to watch that spectacle with spiced date cakes in hand. You kneel by the fountain's rim, running your fingertips over the soot-coated bronze, feeling the ridged chains carved into the captive's arms. The metal is cold despite the warm breeze curling around your shoulders. In the quiet hush of the sleeping square, the statue's bowed head seems to shimmer under the wavering torchlight, as if whispering silent prayers to gods who never listened. Rising again, you step away from the fountain and follow a narrow lane out of the square. The darkness wraps around you, soft and silent, carrying only the faint sigh of drifting ash and the sleepy rhythm of your breath. Above, the stars flicker coldly, indifferent to human cruelty and hope alike. And as you walk deeper into the shadows of this silent city, your tired mind drifts on the warmth of ancient stone, soot, and forgotten prayers etched into bronze beneath a sky that never changes. You continue along the narrow lane, your sandals brushing quietly over scattered soot and broken pottery shards. The street slopes downwards, curving towards the city's outer quarter where the poor once lived, clay huts pressed tightly together, their walls streaked black from smoke drifting endlessly from the palace braziers. Here, silence reigns absolute. No torchlight flickers. Only the faint silver glow of starlight illuminates the collapsed roofs and tumbled stone walls. You step carefully over shattered urns and burnt roof beams, breathing in the mingled scent of charred wood, old ashes, and cool night air. Historians still argue whether this quarter was purposefully left impoverished to keep its residents dependent and fearful, or whether neglect simply festered under the shadow of the ruler's obsessions. You pause beside a half-collapsed dwelling. The door lies splintered against soot-blackened earth. Inside, the single-room home is scattered with fragments of broken clay bowls, a rusted bronze ladle, and the charred remains of a reed sleeping mat. A fringe rumor claims that on festival days, guards patrolled these alleys, dragging entire families from their homes to fill the brazen bull's schedule, ensuring the tyrant never woke to an empty execution list. Sleepy thought, isn't it? The terror of hearing sandals scrape down your street at dawn, knowing your family's names might be called next. You step out into the lane again, weaving between mounds of rubble and narrow stone culverts where stagnant water glistens in moonlight. Overhead, jasmine vines spill from collapsed rooftops, their pale blossoms glowing ghostly against dark stone. Their scent mingles with drifting soot to create an oddly calming perfume, as if the city's decay is softened by nature's sleepy sweetness. Ahead, a broader alley opens into what remains of the public cooking square. Here, stone hearths once lined the open yard, each with a clay chimney funneling smoke into the indigo sky. You stand before one crumbling hearth, brushing away ash to reveal faint carvings of stylized flames curling around its base. Families gathered here each morning, tending pots of lentils, barley porridge, goat stew. Historians still debate whether the ruler ever walked among these hearths to display false generosity, or if he ignored them entirely, content with temple feasts and roasted lambs delivered to his private dining hall. You sit down on the low stone bench beside the hearth, letting the cool surface seep into your tired legs. In the silence, you imagine the square alive again, children giggling as they plucked stray lentils from stone cracks, old women stirring pots with chipped clay spoons, men trading gossip about tax collectors and temple offerings. A fringe theory claims secret rebel meetings took place here at dawn, hidden under the smoke's curling cover. Perhaps you would have joined them, your face streaked with soot, murmuring hopes for freedom as the bull loomed in the distance, silent and hungry. Rising, you walk to the center of the square where a dry stone well stands, its rim worn smooth by countless calloused hands. You peer down into the darkness, smelling damp earth and cold stone. The water below lies silent and black, reflecting only a faint sliver of starlight. You close your eyes and listen to the quiet hum of insects, the distant sigh of the breeze rustling jasmine vines, and your own slow breathing. As you leave the square, the silence deepens around you, wrapping your weary mind in the warmth of drifting ash, soot-streaked walls, and forgotten hearths. The lane narrows once more, leading you between silent doorways and crumbled archways. Above, the sky remains vast and velvet dark, stars flickering like cold, watchful eyes, as if the gods themselves bear witness to the city's endless hush. And as you walk on, deeper into the sleeping ruins of the poor quarter, the quiet soothes your thoughts, the warmth of old ashes curling around your ankles like a silent promise that, here at least, no more flames burn tonight. You walk onwards through the quiet alleys, each step carrying you further into the deepest shadows of the city. The lanes narrow into winding footpaths, curling between silent clay huts and collapsed stone walls streaked black with soot. The breeze rustles softly through broken doorways, carrying the faint scent of burnt resin and drifting ash, mingled with cool jasmine perfume from vines that climb the ruins in pale, ghostly threads. Ahead rises the city's outermost wall, its towering ramparts etched with fading flame motifs and bull-headed guardians. The stone feels warmer here, as if it still remembers centuries of execution fires blazing against its base. You rest your hand upon its soot-blackened surface, feeling ancient heat radiating up through your palm, pulsing like a quiet heartbeat. This wall enclosed the execution grounds beyond the city limits, a barren expanse of scorched sand and shattered clay bricks, where the brazen bull once stood for public burnings before it was moved to the temple amphitheater. Historians still argue whether executions were relocated to increase spectacle or to contain the stench of burning flesh within sacred walls. A fringe rumor claims that ashes scattered here turned the sand permanently black, cursed to remain warm under moonlight until the end of days. You find a narrow stone staircase carved into the rampart, climbing slowly, each step worn smooth by centuries of feet. You reach the parapet and look out across the execution grounds. Under the velvet darkness of night, the sand glimmers faintly with drifting soot, dotted here and there with fragments of blackened bone, reflecting starlight like shattered porcelain. You imagine the crowds gathered here under the noon sun, shielding their eyes with linen scarves as priests anointed the brazen bull's polished bronze flanks. The condemned were led forth, shackled and silent, their heads bowed beneath woven reed hoods. Historians still debate whether these hoods were used to protect prisoners from the sun or simply to hide their terror from the crowd. Sleepy thought, isn't it? Your final moments witnessed by thousands who came for entertainment, sipping spiced goat milk and chewing sweet dates as screams rose into the bright sky. A fringe theory claims that after executions, priests sifted ashes for bone fragments to grind into amulets said to protect against plague and infertility. Imagine wearing a necklace containing traces of a burned rebel, believing it might bless your womb or ward off fever. Such quiet cruelties woven into daily life. You sit down on the parapet, letting the cool stone seep into your tired legs. The breeze curls around your ankles, carrying the faint hum of insects singing in hidden cracks. In the silence, you imagine the fires smoldering below, glowing red through drifting black smoke, while priests chanted purification hymns in long, low voices. You wonder if those burned here found peace within the flames, or if their screams still drift like soot across the sleeping city. Historians still argue whether the tyrant who ruled these fires died peacefully in his bronze-roofed palace or was poisoned by his own trembling priests. The records end abruptly, as if silence swallowed his reign along with his name. Only the brazen bull remained, its polished belly darkened by centuries of soot and sorrow, a silent relic of humanity's cruelest music. You rise from the parapet and begin your slow descent down the narrow steps. The stone cool and worn smooth under your feet. At the base, the breeze sighs through broken archways, curling around you with the warmth of drifting ash and quiet jasmine perfume. And as you step back onto the silent street, the brazen bull's memory fades behind you, leaving only the hush of soot-streaked walls, dark sand glowing under indifferent stars, and the warm, sleepy darkness that wraps around your weary mind like a soft blanket. Now, you find yourself drifting away from the glow of execution fires and the flickering shadows of bull-headed gods. The streets stretch behind you, silent and dark, lined with soot-blackened doorways and silent stone temples. The air grows cooler with each step, carrying the soft perfume of jasmine vines blooming along cracked archways, mingled with the faintest trace of old sandalwood and charred resin. Your breathing slows as you walk, each quiet inhale drawing in warmth and darkness, each exhale releasing the heavy stories of flames and forgotten screams. The breeze curls around your shoulders like a gentle blanket, rustling your hair with a sleepy hush. Your footsteps grow lighter, their echoes fading into the night until only silence remains. Soft and absolute, you close your eyes for a moment, letting the darkness wrap around your thoughts. The flickering images of bronze bulls, burning sand, chanting priests, and silent rebels blur into one quiet shadow, dissolving into the hush of your resting mind. The city fades behind you, leaving only the warm embrace of drifting ash and the soothing whisper of a breeze that carries you deeper into sleep. Let your thoughts slow now. Let the warmth of ancient stone seep into your weary muscles. There is no fire here, no screaming crowd, no looming bronze bull, only darkness, only silence, only the soft hush of your breath and the quiet rhythm of your heart, carrying you gently into dreams beneath a velvet sky filled with cold, watchful stars that hold no judgment, only peace. Sleep well, and may your dreams remain cool and silent tonight.